guys, it's Hash from Disciples here today with Cormac and Hash from Team THC alongside team member Tristan, who topped the LCS 10 this weekend with Virtual World. Um, so they're going to go over the deck, their rounds, and how they somewhat innovated the deck going into the event and leading up to it. So yeah, let's just get straight into it.
Alright. I guess I'll start. Okay. So, I assume the list is on the screen right now, so I'll just like get along with the deck and I'll explain all the card choices and stuff. So when me and Cormac like chose a deck for this event, we wanted to play Virtual World because we thought that it's just going to win the most games out of every deck in the current format. Because I feel like there are decks that have like a really big target on their back right now. Like for example, the pile deck, like the 60 card trap deck, and like Drytron as well, because everyone's just main decking Droll and siding Cycle Reader and cards like that. So like winning with these decks has become virtually impossible over the last couple of weeks. And then all the other decks that people have been trying, like an Emancipator or uh, Infernoble or Dragon Link, we thought that they were all right, but we also like acknowledge that people are still playing hand traps like Nibiru and Imper, and when your deck like doesn't beat them a consistent amount of times, we'd rather just play something that is effectively better because summoning VFD is like the best thing a combo deck can possibly do.
Yeah.
Uh, so we wanted to play Virtual World. We actually looked into alternatives. We almost played the Zoo Elderless that won the event, but I think we just were too confident in our choice, and I don't regret playing Virtual World because I play a lot of backward decks, and that Zoo Eld deck has a terrible matchup with the backward decks. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess Cormac can walk us through the main deck because I explained the deck choice.
Yeah, the main deck for the most part is pretty standard. You have your 31 engine cards that myself and Hash agreed on very quickly. Where we were like, this cannot be touched at all. People have been looking into maybe reducing the number of foolish goods, playing maybe two desires. They want to play things such as some people are playing extravagance, which there may be a debate about. People want to play talents. These sort of cards, I don't think you can play them in place of the 31 engine cards that you have in this deck. You can only play them in conjunction. But we figured that for this event, because there's going to be such a large number of combo decks between Drytron, the Mirror Match, and then the other smattering of combo decks, Emancipator, Infernoble, Dragon Link, we needed to have a decent number of hand traps in our main deck so that not only would we have enough in our main decks that we would consistently see at least one high power hand trap in order to stop them, but also so that our entire side deck wouldn't be taken up by hand traps and we wouldn't have enough to cover the control decks. So we decided on three Gamma, three Droll, and two Ash Blossom because Gamma is generally the strongest hand trap you can have, but it's also particularly good in this deck because it serves as a way to help push through with your weaker hands against the general hand traps, such as Ash, Bell, these sort of things that maybe you only have a weak hand and you only have one main. You want to make sure that you can push through and be able to resolve your plays. Also fantastic in the things like Lancia. That's generally not a thing until post side. But it works both as a hand trap and as a sort of defensive card to allow your plays to go through. And Driver's also a level 6, so like there's ways that it can also turn on your engine in other ways by giving you an extra body that allows you to synchro with. Droll is just the most impactful hand trap against Drytron, which about 2 to 3 weeks ago we were thinking would be by far the most represented deck. It ended up falling off a little bit because everybody started mini Droll and Lockbird, but because that card is so good into that matchup and it does enough against Virtual World that it can stifle enough of their hands, especially the weaker ones. We figured that it was good enough to main deck because it would just give you auto wins against enough of the field game one, and it would do enough to stop other decks, stop them making their full board, and then your engine is more powerful than the majority of those decks, so you're able to push through their mediocre boards more often with a card like Troll and Lockbird. And then Ash Blossom has probably been in the best place it's been for quite a while. Maybe it would have been better a couple of weeks ago when the pile decks are much more popular because those decks, while you want to see back removal against them, Ash is almost as good, if maybe not better, in a lot of scenarios because the cards that you're worried about in those decks, Red Eyes Fusion, Extravagance, Nadir Servant, even the trap cards such as Fiend Grieving, Sinister Shadow Games, Sanguine, all these things can be Ash Blossom. And it works as a hand trap against the combo decks, of course, but it's also really good against the control decks, better than that you would say normally would be in most formats, because all of their power cards can be ashed essentially, and it essentially works as like almost like a bomb in those circumstances.
Yeah.
We were trying to fit 3 in for the longest time, but there really isn't a way to do it without going to 41, or if you wanted to cut Gamma and play a 3 of hand trap, because then you have the space because you cut the driver. But we figured that Gamma was just far too impactful as a hand trap and as a defensive card in our hands going first, for us to be able to cut it. The only other things we maybe considered about the main deck were maybe playing a Call by the Grave. But if anything, I think we considered trying to slide it more than anything else. And you'll see in our side deck later that we couldn't fit it into there. And that was maybe the one card we were trying to fit between our main and our side that we kind of had to concede we weren't able to fit into it. Other than that, I don't think there was much else that we considered. This main deck we built about 3 weeks ago, and it honestly hasn't changed that much since then. We considered other hand traps between now and then. What happened more so is that we changed our side deck pretty consistently because we had to look at how the format was developing every couple of days on Dueling Book, and then adjust for it that way. But the main deck stayed pretty consistent the entire way through.
Yeah, no, it all makes a lot of sense. I don't think that I've got any questions on the main deck. After looking at the lists that appeared from the LCS Top Cut, the main ones I saw, a lot of them just went to 41 and played the third Ash in the main deck. But I like that you elected to go for 40 and then side it. So Hash, if you want to go over the side deck.
Yeah, sure. And I would also just like that to add on to your point of playing 40 cards. It's one of the first things me and Cormac talked about. We were like, there is there should be no reason for you to play any deck at more than 40 cards unless there is grass looks greener in your deck. And with Virtual World's consistency issues, it's even a bigger reason to stick to 40. So even though going to 41 might have fixed some siding problems and siding patterns and would have made space for more cards, it's definitely not worth it because you just want to play as many games as you can play. Anyways, for the side deck, we put in the third Ash for the same reason for the reasons that we talked about when we were talking about the main deck. The card's just really good. We put a 3 Lancia, most impactful hand trap against the mirror match. Not impactful enough, I would say, to be honest. But it's still the most impactful one, unfortunately. It's just that the Virtual World deck is so resilient and good into hand traps. It's just a matter of you need to open it off. Lancia will stop them sometimes, but I think you need to get lucky on average for Lancia to work on its own. As for the other hand traps, we played 2 Cycle Raider because we wanted to have 5 hand traps for Drytron. 5 bomb hand traps for Drytron rather, because that's the number to C1 in 5 cards, which is the number that you have when you're going second into that deck. And it also worked well with the idea of playing Orcus Crescendo to search it with Beatrice if we got hand trapped to a point where we couldn't make VFD anymore against them. We'd always go for Beatrice unless we had the alternative to go for a life Chuche with Shen and you had Droll in your hand. Because that board is probably better than making a Beatrice at that spot. But if you couldn't get there, you'd always make Beatrice and search Cycle Raider, and that would probably be enough, because if you think about it, you only do it when they hand trap you, so they have less cards to play with, which makes Cycle Raider more impactful. As for the last hand traps, Nibiru and Impermanence, I think these are the ones that changed a lot, during our deck building process. We settled on Nibiru because we thought that it is just the most versatile hand trap that you could have in this deck, especially with the rise of people trying to play Adamantipator and Dragon Link. And it's not bad against Drytron and Virtual World. I think for Cormac it underperformed. For me it did fine, it did its job. But the card that certainly overperformed for all of us was Imperm. I wish we somehow fit more, but we couldn't. It was the last card we put in. It was either Imperm or Called by the Grave. And we decided that the hand trap slot is way too important into combo mirrors than the one of Called by, especially when you have Gamma already, which can serve as a Called by in a lot of scenarios anyway. So yeah, we played Imperm. Card is really good. It hits Virtual World because people are tunneling into Cloud Castle combos. Hits Union Carrier every time because Orange Light cannot protect you from Imperm, which is really good. They need another name to keep going after that. and it's also just good against Dragon Link and Emancipator and all the other combo decks people are playing. Lightning Storm and Feather Duster, pretty self-explanatory. We wanted to respect backward decks. We knew they would exist, and I'm glad that I did. Actually, my Lightning Storm, I drew Lightning Storm and Feather Duster maybe 4 times today, and all 4 times were into set 4 back row, and they'd resolve every single time. My opponents never had anti-spell, order, or judgment. That was really weird.
You're broken.
Yeah, it was really broken. It just shouldn't have happened. Then it happened 4 times. And then the last card they said was Mischief of the Gnomes. Same idea for the mirror match. Card overperformed. Stops your opponent from playing the game in the mirror match because it turns all the level 3s into level 2s, which means after they use one virtual world name, the restriction applies to the level 3s because they're level 2. And virtual world can't special summon level 2s after using a name. So yeah, that's the side deck more or less. Cormac, extra deck?
Yeah, so this extra deck, there were a lot of cards that we maybe wanted to fit in or things that we considered along the way, but we really had to trim it down to the things that we figured would be the most necessary, that would come up in the most circumstances that would end up being game winning. There's a lot of, we'll say, just sort of almost like engine extra deck cards. So you obviously have like Shen Chen, which you're always going to play. Your Vermilion, your Chao Feng, these are things that obviously you use as part of your combos. And then your double Cloud Castle, because a lot of the Cloud Castle combos now that are around, obviously because of Chao Feng and Vermilion. Croco is just fairly standard. Stardust Charge and Juju were our level 6 synchros. We decided to go with the Coral Dragon because we found that it just didn't really come up as any sort of necessary card you need to play in your extra deck as part of making your VFD combos. So you're really only playing it for its utility for the majority of it, where you could use it going second and discarding a card, playing at the back row and whatnot. But we figured that if we were going to be doing that, we'd rather be making something like a Fortune Tune into back row decks, because if you were just doing it for the draw, you can just make the Stardust Charge anyway, and almost every single line it is the same play. And if you have two non-tuners and a tuner, you can just go straight into a 9 anyway, and it's fine. You could just make a Croco and then just draw 2 anyway, so it's the same difference. For the Xyz, we played Beatrice because of previously mentioned, for the Crescendo and the Mischief of the Gnomes, which was particularly important. So obviously we were saying that it's about if you get hand trapped a bunch of times, but it's particularly important because of Lancia, if you have a weak hand into Lancia, because if you get hand trapped a bunch of times into combo mirrors, if you're still able to end on Shen Chen plus Chuche, a lot of the time that's still good enough, because it's very difficult to play through that if they've hand trapped you multiple times. But obviously, if you get Lancia, the Chuche won't be live because you have nothing banished. So you really needed something that would be heavily impactful against other combo decks in particular once you get Lancia'd. And the only things that really allowed you to do that in the extra deck were Beatrice dumping the Crescendo to search a Cycle Reader against Rytron, or the Mischief of the Gnomes in order to just turn off your opponent's virtual world names. It was also really strong because not only did it serve as a way to stop your opponent, but if you got hand trapped along the way, obviously, and you didn't have any way to say resolve a GG to add back a virtual world name in the end phase, during your opponent's turn you could then send a Qinglong, and then you've set up your engine for your following turn. So it served as a way to interact with your opponent and stop them once they've stunted you, and then you also get to play on your following turn, which made it super impactful. The M7 is pretty much standard. If anybody's cutting it, I don't know why that card is insane. Not only is it really good for playing into boards, and obviously being able to clear board, attack, and then make a Zeus on top of it, but also going second. If you're in sort of, I wouldn't necessarily call it a grind game in a mirror match, but say your opponent goes first, you hand trap them, say you Lancia them or whatever in a mirror match, or you Cycle Reader them against Rytron, but then they hand trap you and then you can't make a VFD, you can just make M7, add back that hand trap, and then you've just added back the bomb card, and then they've used their bomb card, and then you just win from that point on. Zeus standard, that card is insane. It's absolutely broken. Fortune Tune, we played this over Breaksword because we found in a lot of scenarios with Breaksword against the control decks, they will just wait for you to make the Breaksword, and then they can just use all their interactions in the Breaksword, whether it be Dynamiscus, Punishment, etc., etc. What's the other one? Conquistador. But with Fortune Tune, it can't be targeted, and if it's destroyed, you detach one instead. So it works much better into back row because it just turns off all of them. So you can just attack directly, or you just crash into their monster, detach one, and then main phase 2 you slap your Zeus on top of it, and then they don't have a way to, unless they have a strike set or a judgment, they don't have any way to stop you resolving your Zeus. Which is just at that point will just blow out the control decks because their cards obviously don't float essentially, and then your
Yeah.
cards all just do, and you just have your setup for the next turn. Number 75, Gossip Shadow. This card is just it's standard at this point. Helps make sure that all your combos resolve. And then double VFD, which again should just be pretty much standard. And the only decks that wouldn't be playing double VFD would be playing triple VFD with Extravagance. I think the only other things we considered that ended up not playing were, I think, Utopia Beyond and Enter Blackmere. I mentioned Breakthrough as well, obviously, and Coral Dragon, but we won't go over those any further. Utopia Beyond and Enter Blastmere were important as Dragoonouts, obviously, because you'll see we only have Zeus that serves as a real Dragoon out in our extra deck. But we came to the conclusion that playing 2 Dragoonouts in your extra deck, while in theory you should be the optimal thing that you should be doing, but in reality, against a board that's just set up a Dragoon and multiple back row, you're not going to be able to summon those 2 Dragoonouts as well as baiting out all their back row and be able to clear the Dragoon. So in reality, you're never actually going to be able to end on both of them. So it made the idea of playing a second Dragoon less appealing. So Utopia Beyond kind of fell off for us in that regard. If we were going to play a second Dragoon, it would have been Enter Blackmere. I think the Hash and I both agreed on that. Because not only does it work as a Dragoon by banishing the Dragoon without targeting, it works as dealing with control decks. If they don't do the Dragoon, you're able to banish they detach, and then if they have like a Sanguine Conquest, they have to interact with both of them then and there, because otherwise they're just going to lose one because it's not targeting. It can deal with stuff like main phase 2, because you can obviously overlay with it, banish something in the graveyard, or banish a card in their hand, loop a card out, and then make a Zeus on top of it, which was all really, really strong. A lot of the times in control matchups, I remember on the Thursday and Friday, even before the event, we were like, oh, imagine if we had Enter Blackmere in our extra deck, this would have come up here and it would have been really good. But I think in reality, the conclusion that it wasn't good enough to replace any of the cards in our extra deck, and it wouldn't win more games than any other card in our extra deck would, that we were playing at the time. Looking back on it, the only thing I would consider maybe changing was perhaps the second Cloud Castle, but I also think I just didn't have to use it throughout the event. I have had to use it many times in testing, so I think that's just a small sample size more than anything else. I think if there was a card that I wanted to fit in more than anything else, it probably would have been Enter Blackmere. It would have been like the 16th card in the extra deck, in my opinion, if we were able to fit one in. But throughout the tournament, I didn't miss it personally, but that's just because I played nothing but combo mirrors, so it didn't really come up for the intended purpose. But yeah, that was pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said on it.
Yeah, some people play Downer Magician for Zeus to like make a 4 material Zeus into control decks and whatever, and like we figured that like realistically speaking, that wouldn't come up very often, like with Fortune Tune, because often you'd have to crash into something and detach a material anyway, so then there would be 1 material under the Fortune Tune, and even if you ended up making Zeus, it would just be a 3 material Zeus with Downer. I mean, if you wanted to do it more consistently, you'd probably have to play like something like Nightmare Shark, but Nightmare Shark is just bad. So, I think Downer was just the correct choice. Not playing Downer was the correct choice for sure. Beatrice could have gone to the side deck, but that would have entailed cutting a hand trap, and like I cannot stress how fucking important hand traps are right now. This is so combo intensive. The format is super combo intensive. There's like if you can afford to play a hand trap, just do it immediately, because it's just the most important thing you could conceivably ever do right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's ridiculous and it's really unhealthy, but you have to deal with it.
One thing that I think I
is-
just want to bring up regarding that is that I think something that was really important for us on that point, just to mention, by the way, I played nothing but combo mirrors. It's genuinely all through Swiss and in both my matches in Top Cut. I played
What was
10
your
combo
record in
mirrors.
these combo mirrors? What was your record, Spine?
Up until top 8, I was 9-0 in combo mirrors, and genuinely, I think the reasoning for that was because I looked back on the topping deck list, and I would just see from a lot of the other decks that I was playing against, in the combo mirrors, they were not playing as many hand traps as we were. So the amount of times that they would draw 1 hand trap and it wouldn't be enough to stop me, most games that was what happened. They would troll me, or I would set up a 75 and then go low, and they would try to bell me, and I would just negate it. And because they didn't play enough hand traps, they didn't have a second one, and they didn't have enough in their deck to reliably draw a second one. So, the difference with that in our deck, we had 8 hand traps in our main deck, and then from our siding patterns against both Virtual World and Drytron, we should have 14 or 15 hand traps play side going second against those decks, which gives you the optimal. Yeah, exactly right. It's the optimal number to allow you to see 2 hand traps. Whereas when I look back on other decks, they were maining maybe 3 to 6, and then they were siding maybe 3 to 6 more, which doesn't sound like a lot if they're going up to 12 hand traps, but those extra percentages are all adding up to you, and
Yeah.
they're working in your favor. And even against the
And
other, say, let's say, I don't even know, call them non-meta, but the other combo decks like Adamancifate or Infernoble Dragonlink, usually you could only play like one of Droll or Lancia against them. Very few of those decks lose to both of them, which is a reason why we decided to play something like Nibiru over, say, like Skullmeister or Bell. But against those decks, because we played the Nibiru and the Impermanence, it meant we would also have 13 hand drops plus side against them going second, which is still an optimal number to allow you to see two, which meant that you would just be able to stop them playing more consistently than they'd be able to stop you playing. And then as long as you just see like multiple hand traps and then just engine cards, which is what this entire deck is, you're going to win those games even going second.
yeah, and many people who actually did have enough hand traps would do it in a way that they would keep it Droll against the virtual world deck both side, and I think that's a terrible decision. Like the best thing Droll does is stop Gossip Shadow from being a card because he can't use Gossip Shadow when you're under Droll. But otherwise, Droll is like basically a fluke hand trap in that matchup. It doesn't do enough consistently. Any other hand trap is probably better than Droll against virtual world. Please don't keep it in both side. It's terrible.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I thought you were gonna keep going for a second then. Um, right. So, have either of you got like an event overview and shout outs as well at the end? So start with Hash.
The event was ran pretty smoothly. I mean, Luxury has been doing a great job with these LCSs, to be honest. And my rounds were fine. I think I played like, out of the 3 players in my team, I think I played against the most diverse list of matchups. Playing against like maybe 4 Eldritch decks around like, and then the rest were just combo decks, I think. So like almost half split between control and combo. Um, Overall personal record was like I think 7-2. I lost once in Swiss, the very last round, and I lost in top 16.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the deck ran pretty smoothly. I wouldn't necessarily like go back to Friday and change something in this list. I was really happy with all the choices. Um, and yeah, shout outs to my teammates, especially Cormac, who like worked with me on this list for like way more time than we should have worked on this list for. I'll be honest. Uh, Shout out to WAF, best Discord in the game. We won another LCS. We're doing really well. And yeah, that's more or less it. Cormac, go ahead.
Yeah. Just for the quick event overview for my matchups, like I said, I played against nothing but combo mirrors. I think looking back on it, I played against 5 Drytron, 2 mirror matches, 2 Adamancipators, and 1 Lyreless Fire Brigade. Funny story, the game 1 against the Lyreless Tri Brigade, he went first, resolved his full combo, and I still managed to win because I just slow rolled him with Virtual World cards. Virtual World is just a control deck when you want it to be. It's insane.
Yo.
So yeah, and I finished 8-0 in Swiss, won my top 16, and then lost in top 8. So top 8 was my first loss. It just happened to be that was the important one. So it was unfortunate, but anyway, it happens sometimes. So anyway, for shoutouts, like Hash said, shoutouts to our team, Hash for convincing me to play another LCS. I only play 3v3s apparently. To the Discord, we had 6 teams enter, 4 teams top. Nets, Christian, and Paolo won. So that's WAP's 4th LCS win in a row and our 6th win in 10. So we're doing pretty well so far. Hoping to make it 7 out of 11 at the next one. And for my team, Eman Games, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, like us on Card Market, etc., etc. And yeah, just to everybody who's watching at home, hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy, etc., etc. Yeah.
That's so wholesome. Oh my god. But yeah, guys, another virtual world list. I've got Tristan's list of the Tri Brigade bird pile coming up at some point, and Gabriel's should be recording something as well. So stay tuned for those. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel, as well as following all of our socials in the description below. Also, don't forget to check out our sponsors at the Brotherhood Games, Messamat and Craft Pocket Down for high quality products and one of the best tournament organisers in the UK. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next video.